Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the third panel. This panel, it's on climate change. Is a challenge for the entire coffee value chain, and we need to take comprehensive, collaborative approach. And how can you ensure that responsibilities for adoption and mitigating climate change is shared by all actors? My name is Primus Kimario. I'm from Tanzania Coffee Board. We'll be moderating this panel. With me, I have 4 panelists. To start on my right is Alejandro Keller. I'd like to welcome you to the panel. He's from Ana Cafe, Association of National Coffee Association from Guatemala. Then with me is Brian Leinoff from the Crop Trust based in Germany. On my left side, far end, is Annette Pencel, is the interim director of the newly established Global Coffee Platform. And I have, lastly but not least, Aitor Ezcura from Investment Development Bank. Most welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic is quite interesting one, and we've been here a lot about climate change. And yes, climate change is real and it's happening. And it's very interesting for coffee because we all know coffee is produced in the south, consumed in the north. Coffee is produced by the, we say, by the poor, consumed by the rich. and with the climate change effects and the statistic we have is that coffee demand is increasing. Coming year 2030, it's envisaged or estimated that coffee demand will approximately be around 200 million bags. And with the effect of climate change, that's for sure that we are getting low and low output due to climate change. But I don't want to speak much about it. In short, is that with the same output, with the same efforts of the farmer, he's getting less. We got last report, I think I read from Colombia, that production is being decreased partly due to climate change. Now, to start with my panelists, I would like to welcome Alejandro. Please, can you briefly, from producer perspective, what challenges do we see in relations to the climate change? Most welcome. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. What challenges do we see? Well, first of all, climate, it's one climate in the whole world. We have to look at it holistically, and we have to look at the international politics and treaties that and policies that have been derived from this subject. Then we have to look at national laws and national institutions that are responsible for this subject, and then the sector aspects of it. As Ana Cafe, we are the director of the coffee sector, and we try to interact with coffee growers, with the stakeholders of the chain, and as well as all these other institutions in order to bring about comprehensive guidelines and policies that will have an effect on the sector. So we try to work in coordination with the government and the public sector. And one of the main goals that we have is to prioritize and define what's really important in order to get going. Other institutions that we're working with, examples of it is CARE, and we're looking at aspects of poverty and children issues, and analyzing the social dynamic that climate change can have on the sector. A couple of years ago, we were severely attacked by coffee leaf rust, and we attribute this attack mostly due to climate change. And we saw how migration incremented in that year drastically, and also the effect on food security in rural areas. We're also working with institutions in developing software that will help us connect with farmers to do better weather forecasting analysis, soil analysis, and recommendations. Again, Anacafe is working hard to help the farmer make better decisions and have more data in order to do preventive and corrective necessary measures. Anacafe is also working with international cooperation partners to do manuals that will help technicians and producers to do integral evaluations in regard to climate change vulnerability. And there, we're holding also workshops with producers and technicians to better make better diagnosis in this regard. So all of this, of course, has a cost because you have to adapt the best plant varieties, you have to adapt the best planting distances, renew plantations. All of this is only going to work if the plantations are productive in an optimal way, and therefore a holistic and integral point of view needs to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, on producer perspectives and on climate change. Annette, Global Coffee Platform interlink the national platforms on one hand, and we have your members, most of them as roasters. And this at least is the link between from seed to sip. How do you see these challenges across the value chain?
Thank you very much, Primus. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting us to be here. Before I answer your question, or try to answer your question, I would like to briefly introduce the Global Coffee Platform. It's a very new organization. It's a multi-stakeholder membership organization made of actually roasters, but also the trade, exporters, very important producers and cooperatives, and also civil society organizations, including voluntary sustainability standards. We have also coffee associations from producing and consuming countries, and increasingly get interest from banks, from research, from warehouses. The intention of the Global Coffee Platform actually is to become a vehicle for change, for better alignment, and for getting more aligned action on the ground that benefits at the end of the day, but first and foremost, the coffee farmers. We have been hearing a lot about the challenges that coffee farmers all over the coffee producing countries face, and they are very complex. So you would want to perhaps think, like everybody is doing already so much. We have been doing a study where we came up with an annual investment in coffee sustainability of about 350 million US dollars. And a lot of activities also to combat climate change effects, to increase the resilience of coffee farmers, to improve their ability to adapt to the changing weather patterns and the changing climate. There has been some progress made. But what we realize as a private sector, it's not enough, and there are so many fragmented initiatives, and we don't scale what is working, and we don't exchange on what is not working. So we reinvent the trial and error in different countries and different contexts. And often we address, as previous speakers in previous panels said, we address those farmers who have already been able to be access to have quite a good position in the value chains. So back to Prima's question, how can the Global Coffee Platform, which is being built as we speak, it's a young organization, taking the membership of the former 4C Association and building in the program track record of the Sustainable Coffee Program of IDH and Roasters. How can this platform now avoid the fragmentation and try to align the industry in a better public-private partnership to address these challenges that the climate change brings? We think we need to talk, we need to align, we need to understand each other, because there are very different perspectives and very different needs in this industry. But at the end of the day, it gets down to how can we support in a much more effective way the farmers. Do we know what we can tell farmers? Then we should scale that, and we should avoid duplicating that. Do we perhaps not exactly know? Then we need to identify the gaps of our knowledge, and there's a lot related to climate change, and we need to better build alliances actually with research and with universities. This is what the Global Coffee Platform is looking into contributing to, and it's very important that I think it's very important that we cannot believe that we can have a global answer to this very location-specific questions. Each country is different. Each sub-region is different. Each production systems are very different. So we need to talk and build much better working alliances for action with the national platforms that have been mentioned before, with the stakeholders, you in the room here and many others out there, and overcome that fragmentation. The Global Coffee Platform wants to make a contribution to that. We are learning while building this vehicle, and we are building this vehicle to actually address, as a coffee sector, together with the governments, together with the donors and the research, with the private sector and with the farmers, sustainable development goals. That's the guiding principles. And we all know that there is one very explicit climate action principle under the Sustainable Development Goals that looks into both adaptation but also mitigation strategies. So we have a framework to work on, and we need to perhaps just get more done.
Thank you very much, Annette. Yes, we have different cropping systems, but with studies revealed that climate change will actually impact on the biodiversity of the crops. And with me is Brian here. Brian, Crop Trust also works on to conserve crop biodiversity. And that, to me, I assume that a good cup of coffee today will not be the same good cup of coffee in the 50 years to come. Tell me, how is the biodiversity affected by climate change?
Thank you, Primus, and thank you for having me here today. Climate change will place massive pressures on our ability to grow the food, or in this case, the coffee that we need to have a successful consuming and producing market. These impacts will be particularly severe in coffee-producing countries. All IPCC scenarios show that climate change over the next several decades, irrespective of any action taken today, will be dramatic. The same models show that conditions for agriculture will be dramatically different from those in which we make up our farmlands today. Therefore, adapting agriculture to these future conditions is essential. Now, for this instance, imagine building a house without the tools, without the material. It's difficult. Now imagine building that same house without the tools, without the materials, in an environment, a place, a culture that you don't know about and you don't understand. Practically impossible. The need, therefore, for having crop diversity and crop varieties that can withstand these challenges is important, and it is widely acknowledged in climate change discussions. For example, in the UN SDGs, Target 2.5 summary says, we must conserve crop and animal diversity across the world. Luckily, the Crop Trust is built and established to do just that for crop diversity. We're established and built to fund and create a global system for the conservation of crop diversity worldwide. The development of crop varieties that can cope with heat, drought, other extremes may well be the single most important step we can take to adapt to climate change. It's not the only step, but it is a step. Again, imagine building a house without any of the materials. These plants, these crops, these seeds are the raw materials for our farmers and the entire coffee chain. And this, it takes time to do this. It takes time to adapt. 10 years for staple crops like wheat, maize, and rice to produce a new variety. Now with perennial crops like coffee, 60 years life of a tree, we need to act quickly. Every country may be different, as Annette said, but we can all work together to safeguard the crop diversity, in this case the coffee diversity, that we will need to adapt our future farming, our future agriculture in coffee to the challenges we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brian. Now, we need to see how best we can address this along the value chain, and how, although we all know that agriculture does not really play a major role in emissions. Number one emitter is the energy sector. However, we need to see how best all actors along the coffee subsector can be involved in mitigating and adapting to and mitigating to climate change in a shared manner by all the actors. Coming back to Alejandro, how can we ensure that this adaptation and mitigation are shared by all actors along the value chain?
Climate is one in the whole world, so we're all interlinked in this subject. And coffee tends to be produced in producing countries and consumed in other countries. So there is a link between all of us in this activity. And the way I see it is, or the way Ana Café sees it, is that in order to have a future in this business, we cannot be opportunistic anymore. We have to do an integral analysis, a long-term vision, and we have to take into account the environment and included climate change. We have to take into account social aspects. We have to take economic aspects, and we have to do an integral vision of the business. If we're just going to work opportunistically, it's going to be very volatile. And according to scientists, there's already a 1.5 degree increase in the temperature. If we reach 2 degrees, it's going to become a lot more volatile, and this can create conditions that we don't understand yet. So we have to act now, all as a sector, in order to achieve the necessary things to move forward. And as far as Ana Café goes, we're working with in doing models where we look at this integrally, so that banks can look at the results of working in this way. But where we take into account the social aspects, food security aspects, education aspects, health aspects, and the economic aspects. But of course, the commercial aspects are going to be it's going to be a very important aspect as well. So I see this business prospering only if it's long-term viewed and integrally viewed.
Thank you very much, Leandro. You mentioned about investment, and with me, I have Aitor here from IDB. You are doing investment in agriculture-related activities. I'd like, how can you explain about criterias on investment you are doing, if they are related, if climate change is one of the criteria to consider?
Thank you, Primus. Yeah, the IDB is a developmental finance institution focusing on Latin America and the Caribbean. And we work both with the public sector and with the private sector. With the public sector, we work directly with governments, and in the private sector, directly with companies, and providing financing. With companies, we provide financing. Regarding climate change, Primus, is there has been a lot of pressure. There has been a lot of pressure internally and externally on developmental finance institutions to do more. And last year, the IDB committed to do 30% of all the investments we do by the year 2020 in investments in relation with climate change. And now focusing into coffee. Because much of that climate change business that we're going to be doing is going to be in renewables. Renewable energy is going to be on transportation, efficient transportation, but there is also going to be on agribusiness. So then on agribusiness and directly related to coffee, I'm going to talk to you about an example of a deal that we did in Nicaragua last year. We provided to medium-sized and some small-sized farmers, coffee farmers in Nicaragua, long-term financing and technical assistance for replanting, and replanting related to the problem that they were having with La Roya. It was partial replanting, and in order to address this climate change problem that they were facing. And the way we did it is by putting together a facility that we call risk-sharing facility. We brought into the picture many of the players of the supply chain. We brought an international trader. We brought coffee companies. We brought another developmental finance institution plus a local player. And it was very difficult, as you can imagine, many parties, many different views, but it happened. Finally, we were able to close it. So it is difficult to put together this kind of financing when it comes to difficult and complex issues which involve small farmers, coffee farmers addressing climate change, but it could be done. Now we are working on replicating this in other countries in Central America.
Thank you very much. Maybe an additional question. The industry has been largely looking into the bean. Do you think now it's the right time to consider other benefits the coffee tree can provide? You know, coffee tree is a perennial crop, has got other benefits like carbon sequestration and also environmental protections for the case of erosions. Do you think we need another system whereby farmers can benefit apart from selling their coffee?
Yes, although there is nothing that has been, to my knowledge, directly related to the coffee business. There has been platforms created for other agribusiness sectors, but not for coffee. So at some point in time, we have to start developing those platforms too.
Lastly, coming back to Annette, what can we do to make sure that now all actors along the value chain they take joint actions against mitigating the effects of climate change?
That's a very good question, and this is why we are here. We are focusing the dialogue on understanding each other better. So to raise enough attention in the industry, I think there is enough attention for climate change. But then it's a huge subject for the companies out there. So we don't necessarily have in every company a climate change expert, but there is the expertise in the sector. So what we as a global coffee platform, and we have heard very good examples here from the panelists as well, we are trying to bring these actors together in order to get to that collaboration that is more focused and more aligned. For that, we need an agenda, we need priorities, and we need mechanisms in order to, and channels, and funds, of course, to get that done. In the Global Coffee Platform, our board will now, in 2 weeks from now, present actually the priorities for the next year to the members. The members need to approve that. And then part of the membership fee will be also given to support a workstream, as we call it, on climate smart agriculture. Amongst the membership alone, we have several initiatives who are doing promoting climate adaptation practices, but also are looking into mitigation strategies. We know that the coffee sector has been struggling with and is continuing to work on a product environmental footprint, so as to align better what then also the roasters, the industry, can do, and that this is communicated in a much better way also to the producing countries, so that we don't have the imbalances there anymore. So there are many activities already happening. What we are trying to do is bringing these in different initiatives more to the forefront. I can point you to a publication that was launched last week and is available on the website also of our partners SCAA and Conservation International. Niels is here as well and SCAA is here as well. We did a study together, pulling money together to have a consultant looking at all major coffee activities in the sector and putting that out. And many of them are addressing climate change. So there is a lot of information there, but sometimes we don't have really a good place to access the information and then to convert it into more aligned action. This is what we hope to contribute as we are building the Global Coffee Platform and as we are working with the ICO and the governments at a national level to establish mechanisms in a more effective way to address the variety of problems.
Thank you very much. Now, Brian, actually, climate change affects the social, the sustainability of the industry as a whole, and we all know that from other panel we have heard that when you talk of sustainability, is that it seems one leg is shorter than the other, and that's the economic leg. Now, how can we jointly all actors address this issue in terms of sustainable addressing the effect of climate change?
Thank you, Primus. Our chairperson today asked us to be bold and provocative, so I will try to do that right now, maybe to my dismay. We at the Crop Trust believe that crop diversity is a global public good. It is as important as the air we breathe and the water we drink. It is the food that feeds us. So why not to the coffee industry and the whole coffee community as a whole, why is not coffee a global good? We all share responsibility for its successes and its failures, and we all need to address those together. The chairperson also suggested that we finish our opening remarks in 3 minutes or less, which I did, and if we did, we would get a free cup of coffee. But I would happily pay for that cup of coffee and have some of that profit go to conserve coffee diversity. And that should be a part of every part of this chain. We should all work together to conserve this diversity. And this may come back to bite me next time I buy a cup of coffee, but that's okay to me, and that's important. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. So in conclusion, I think we have all agreed that as a result of climate change being a global issue, all actors are affected, and it needs to be addressed by the whole industry in a collective manner. Be it a roaster, we all know what they are doing. They are trying through technology to reduce emissions. Transport, logistics, farmers themselves, the smart agriculture. So everyone is doing this is the way forward for all of us. I'd like to thank you, moderators, panelists. Thank you very much, Annette. Thanks, Aitor. Thanks, Brian. And thanks, Alejandro, for all for your constructive and really good comments on this. And we've come to the end of our discussion. Thank you very much for your contributions, and I welcome the chair for further information. Thank you very much.